for us to count a machine ultimately as a real person. We'd want it to have its own subjectivity and its own consciousness.
Are we going to make machines tools in our image, or are we going to worship the machines and try to make ourselves in the image of the machines?
The fashion is that, no, we're going to build a machine, and human consciousness is essentially, we will be able to capture it in a digital machine.
Yeah, well, I think that's just wrong.
To properly understand intelligence, you need to root it in its biological context.
AI systems and AI research model human thoughts, but not human thinking.
First we see wearables and later it evolves into, AI actually inside of the head.
In every arena that we have thought is uniquely human, they will transcend us.
The question for us to entertain is, why should we fear AI?
And that is just going to be an entryway, a vector into serious corruption of our justice system.
So the question for us to entertain is, why should we fear AI? We're building programs that do remarkable things, but certainly not in the way that we do. Question we discussed on a panel this morning was, well, will they just keep evolving faster than we can and just become suddenly super bright? We have no reason to think so. It's very hard to know what the general intelligence that we have, certainly self-reflective intelligence, is about, but they will become extraordinarily capable in these niche tasks, and it will be for us to decide what to do with those capabilities. Will they, for example, take all our jobs? Well, they're going to be taking all our jobs, according to Der Spiegel, for the last 50 years. This is a front cover in 64, 78, and 2016. Two things about that. Yes, automation will dislocate people out of some jobs, but we humans are very ingenious about giving ourselves new things to do, about valuing things that we want humans to do, and inventing whole new classes of activity for us to be paid for, from game show hosts to organizers of AI festivals. This is the thing we should be slightly more concerned about. It's the strangers we've invited into our home, Alexa. It's what will happen when we put more and more AI into the toys that our children play with. It's the platforms that control all the data. These are immediate and pressing challenges that have to do as much with governance. They have to do as much with the whole challenge around who determines what ends this technology is put to. Now, computing and AI is a dual-use technology, just as the chemical science, biological science, and nuclear science has been used for what we might think of as constructive and rather more destructive purposes. We shouldn't be giving up on this just because it seems like it's rampaging ahead. We have to exactly now begin to think about what the limitation treaties are, what the self-ordnance challenges are, whether we can put some of the rules of the road into the programs themselves, not that they're aware of it, but they effectively implement rules of engagement. That will prove to be tricky, but we will need to do it. We will need, more urgently, to work out who's got our data and who's doing what with it, because all of these AI algorithms, particularly the later generations, are rapacious and very hungry when it comes to consuming data. And I will just leave you with a slight frightener, because this is fun. Those of you who have your apps on your smartphone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, this is one app, Airbnb. A lot of you might be using it. If you have Airbnb with eBay and Instagram and Tinder, say those 4 apps, you've got a lot more than 4 apps on your phone. This is the flow of information off that one app about where you are, your personal details, your phone characteristics, your phone ID, your general location, your exact location. These are all the places that hoover it up. And this is what it's being used for. Did you know that flow of data? Do you think you're in control of it? Are the regulators allowing you to be in control of it? What does a future look like in which we are somewhat more in control of this evolving landscape? And what's true for data will be true for the AI algorithms themselves. What we mustn't do is allow professors of AI or geeks in basements or the 15 or so middle-aged, super rich white blokes in Silicon Valley to make decisions on our behalf about how and when and where all of this technology should be used. I'm a huge admirer of the products of these companies in many respects, but that doesn't mean they are given a free rein. And you're starting to see a little bit of a pushback on that very issue as we speak.
I mean, is it possible that AI does acquire sociability, at least between other artificial intelligent machines, if not between AI machines and humans?
Okay, so here we go again with the idea about acquiring is really interesting because, as I just said, it's designed, right? So even if a system changes over time because it's got machine learning built into it, now in real life, the machine learning usually is used during the development phase and is no longer used in production. So when you get to play with the AI, it's not actually learning, except in very carefully specified ways. Like, it can learn your name. It might be, maybe it can learn the layout of your house. If it's a vacuum cleaner, most of these robot vacuum cleaners don't learn the layout of your house. They just bump around, right? But even if you had that, even if you as a company sat down and said, I'm going to produce this product that really is going to develop and change, that is still the responsibility of the corporation. So that was about will AI itself acquire?
Yeah, will we design it?
Think, so now the question, so morally that changes a lot. We may design it that way. And I think what's worse is that people may choose to market it in such a way that it is given legal personality, even though it is actually an extension of a corporation or a government or some other powerful individual, right? So it's literally buying votes, right? There's this idea, there's, again, complete disinformation that Sophia the robot is a citizen of Saudi Arabia. Was never true. It was made a honorary citizen. I mean, there are so many constraints about being a citizen of Saudi Arabia that Sophia the robot doesn't make. You have to be at least Muslim, but it's not sufficient to be Muslim, but you have to at least be Muslim to be a citizen of Saudi Arabia, right? So there's a lot of fictions that are, and disinformation spread. And so what I'm worried about is there may very well be artificial intelligence that is given these kinds of legal powers. And that is just going to be an entryway, a vector into serious corruption of our justice system.
So we'll get to the ethical questions in a bit, but why do you think there is so much misunderstanding around AI? You've touched upon the metaphor of anthropomorphizing machines, and B, the sort of like marketing side from companies that are developing AI. Are those the main sources of misunderstanding?
No, I don't think so, although of course marketers are very well motivated to try to make them so. But I do think it's fundamental to how we socialize, that whenever we meet an entity that we think might be human, then we start playing sort of in-group, out-group games. We say, do you speak English? Things like that. And try to figure out, if you're a teenager, you say, what's your favorite band? You immediately try to figure out, how much can I trust this entity? And so I think when people encounter technology with which they can speak, of course they're going to play those games. Of course they're going to see. But it all breaks down. So with a human, the fact that I'm spending this time talking to you really is an honest signal that I somehow value the time we have together and that we have something in common. But with a machine, of course, it doesn't matter how long it spends talking to you. So the person may feel confidence because the machine spent a lot of time at the beginning, chatting about the weather or whatever. But in fact, it's only costs a tiny amount of electricity, and to the corporation or whatever that's providing that facility.
I think that AI systems will become so brilliant, so complicated, that we will not be able to even understand them. They will write poetry that no person could ever write, have deeper insights into human nature than any psychologist has ever had. In every arena that we have thought is uniquely human, they will transcend us and leave us in the dust. No doubt, I have no doubt about that. We're stuck with 86 billion neurons. They're not stuck with that limitation. So the best poetry, the best art, the best movie scripts, the best insights into human nature in the future will come from AIs, and we have to get used to that. Do I think that they're conscious? I think, again, I don't want to accept the premise of that question. I think the distinction that we make between living and non-living things is not a principled distinction. It's an artifact of the limitations of our space-time user interface. So space and time, our perceptions are not a perception of reality as it is. It's a headset. We've evolved a headset of 4 dimensions, 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time with physical objects. And a headset, a user interface, necessarily is simplifying certain things. It gives you good insights into some parts of the reality outside, and it simplifies other things. So if consciousness is fundamental and space-time is just a headset, then I'm always, without exception, interacting with consciousness no matter what I do. When I pick up a spoon, when I drink a cup of coffee, I'm always interacting with consciousness, but my user interface is dumbing things down. So I don't ever see all the time the consciousness behind. When I talk with Bernardo, I'm just seeing skin, hair, and eyes, but that symbol in my interface gives me genuine insight into Bernardo's consciousness. And I can tell if he's interested or if he disagrees. I get it. So my interface gives me a portal into Bernardo's consciousness. Whereas when I look at my cat, my portal is not nearly as good. I have some insight into the experience. It likes tuna, but it doesn't like, peanut butter. So I have some insight into when I have an interface symbol that I call an ant, my insight is even less. And at some point when I get down to a rock, my insight is gone. And so, but that doesn't mean that I'm not interacting with consciousness when I see a rock. It just means that my interface gave up. So for example, right now on the screen, I see Kurt's face on pixels on the screen. Some of the pixels are just pixels for a wall. They're giving me no insight into consciousness, but the pixels that I see that are Kurt's face are giving me some insight into Kurt's conscious experiences. Does that mean that some of the pixels on my screen are conscious pixels and other pixels are not conscious pixels? No. It's just that some pixels provide a portal that's useful into Kurt's conscious experiences and other pixels do not. So a rock is a set of pixels in my interface that doesn't give me insight into the consciousness behind. But that doesn't mean that there's some principal distinction between, unconscious rocks and conscious human brains. That distinction that we make is mistaking a limit of our interface for an insight into the nature of reality. It's a rookie mistake.
If I saw a machine exhibiting the kinds of complex behavior that a human being can exhibit, I would probably attribute thought and consciousness to it. But it's not as if you can just kind of reach inside. It's not as if there's any simple brain scan you can do of an animal or any simple computer program you can do scan of a computer and say, that's where the thinking is.
Are you therefore pursuing artificial intelligence or artificial consciousness? Can you have one without the other?
Well, all of these words are horribly ambiguous. I use consciousness for the subjective part. I think it's useful to use intelligence for the behavioral part, for the operational part. I mean, just say if we were worried about machines taking over the world, then in a way what's going to matter is the behavior. If these machines are smart enough to outsmart us and beat us in the machine-human war and so on, it's going to be little consolation that they're unconscious zombies, right? It's going to be intelligence and behavior that makes the practical difference. So I think it's at least useful for some purposes to use intelligence for the behavioral part, and that does allow you to bracket to some extent questions about consciousness. Although it does leave open the question: how much intelligent behavior will you be able to get from a system that doesn't have
But you think we will get, when you say we'll get machines cleverer than us, you mean we will get machines that are conscious like us that are clever. So we will make an artificial consciousness.
I believe that once we have machines which are as intelligent as us, can behave in ways as sophisticated and impressive and flexible as us, they will also be conscious. So
By magic, or is it, I mean...
We don't understand consciousness, so yeah, it's all consciousness is magic somehow.
Okay.
But I think
you heard it here first.
Yeah. The brain does it through complicated information processing, I think, and that's how a computer will do it too.
The biocentric notion of intelligence was actually one that was popular amongst philosophers prior to Descartes, who were influenced by Aristotle. On that old view, what they called the soul was responsible for the vital functions of the body. So there couldn't be a living system unless there was literally some kind of mental or soulful activity at work. An innovation that we associate with Descartes, like kind of founding modern science, if you like, is part of this rejection of Aristotelian philosophy. And this is demoting the soul from having responsibility for keeping the body alive. The body is now seen as a machine that runs along without any need for intelligence in its operations. So even the intelligent reactions of the nervous system get reclassified as simple reflexes. And what you see on the slide here is an image from one of Descartes' publications where he's showing the reflex, which is enabling the man to withdraw his foot. So the reflex is sort of part of the nervous system here. And then there is this connection between the nerves of the body and the soul through the pineal gland in the brain. So the body and soul do talk to each other, but the body's keeping itself alive is just the body machine. The soul doesn't have to be involved with that. So if the body is just a machine and the brain is just an organ of the body responsible for intelligence, and this is what 20th and 21st century materialists think, or the people making AI devices, then it stands to reason that you could instantiate intelligence in another kind of machine, such as a digital computer. And on this slide here, you have Norbert Wiener, who is one of the other founders of AI. So he was a part of the cybernetics movement. And what is pictured here is one of his cybernetic creations. These were machines which were supposed to have some kind of self-regulating ability to sort of go about their business in the world, a bit like an animal. But it was very much part of this movement of research that whatever it is that animals are doing is something that could be quite straightforwardly instantiated in a machine. And what he and his co-author are talking about here is kind of admitting, as when he says that from the scientific standpoint, the methods of study of human and animal behavior have to be applicable to mechanical objects as well. I think what he's admitting is that in order to make sense of biological intelligence and intelligent behavior of animals, to make sense of them as scientists, they have to think of them in machine-like terms. So you don't get, if you like, the clarity of scientific insight that they want into biological intelligence without using machines as a model, without drawing some analogy between what people have made, these engineered devices, and what they think is going on in animals as well. But I emphasize this because what I think it tells us is it's not a discovery of science that animals are machine-like. It's that science has to assume that animals are machine-like in order to make sense of them, which is why this idea of machines having all the properties of animals seems then really compelling to people.
I'm very, very excited about the possibility of AI going inside the head, for example, to help individuals who have locked-in syndrome or individuals who can't move for other reasons. But the same technologies that may actually help individuals who are radically disabled may also be the kind of technologies that pose dangers. So I think, again, things have to move forward very carefully. So Elon Musk recently demoed the use of a brain chip in pigs, actually. And that technology, as he noted, is incredibly transformative for individuals who can't move. Wow, right? And it's exciting that it may be, 10 years away from development, actual use, that is, or even 5 years away from actual use. But at the same time, suppose that normal people feel obligated to get brain chips so that they can continue their jobs and keep up with artificial intelligence, to augment their intelligence. There, I think we have to be very careful because of the possibility that we could have dystopian outcomes.
Now I want to argue that AI systems are not actual thinkers, and in that sense they're not intelligent, but thought models. So the nature of an AI system is to be a model of the way in which humans actually think, and thereby also the way in which humans ought to think. So AI systems can surpass us in many activities, from more or less elementary pattern recognition in data sets, say, up to skills that we very much cherish, such as chess playing or playing Go and other intellectual activities, certain mathematical proofs, and so forth. So that is something that seems to threaten human intelligence, because these systems, to the extent to which they model our intelligence, surpass us. But on closer inspection, a thought model, of course, needn't be intelligent in itself, just like a model of a city needn't be a city. To be sure, many models share the relevant property with the target system that they're models of. So if I flood a model of a city in the Netherlands in order to predict certain problematic outcomes of climate warming and catastrophic human-made climate change, if I do this, then I do actually flood something. But I don't necessarily flood a city, because we don't build Dutch cities in order to then flood them. So, but that means that some models, of course, share some interesting and relevant property of their target system, whereas other models share less, or rather more formal properties, such as the model of the Black Forest, which doesn't consist of trees, but of certain representations of trees, whereas the actual Black Forest consists of trees. So a Google map of the Black Forest, which helps me to find a restaurant in the Black Forest, differs more from the Black Forest in certain respects than a model of a Dutch city differs from a Dutch city with respect to flooding. So there are different types of relationships between models and what they're models of, their target systems. Now, in the AI case, I think that AI systems and AI research model human thoughts, but not human thinking. So what their model is the logical structure or some other mathematically accessible structure that characterizes the relationship between our thoughts. But what they don't model are the activities of our thinking, because the activities of our thinking, and that's going to be crucial in a minute in the second part, are, as a matter of fact, in human animals, biologically grounded. So no argument to the effect that there could be or even is conscious AI should, of course, assume that we are conscious AIs in a relevant sense. There has to be a distinction between us and the system whose consciousness we want to question. And that difference lies in the other element of the concept of AI, namely in the A of the AI, the artificiality. So AI systems, other than natural intelligent systems, such as bees and humans, did not evolve in the way in which we evolved. We are cell-based life forms, highly complex and organized life forms, which are not even nearly deciphered by the life and natural sciences, though we have made considerable progress, in particular over the last 100 years, or actually less, since the beginning of the discoveries of molecular genetics in particular. But those progresses, of course, all tell us that we are essentially biologically grounded or embodied, as the saying goes.
A life well tracked. So you have to stick your Fitbits and sleep trackers and all the technology that you can possibly afford that is going to tell you, how well you're doing, and it will give you answers such as, today you are at 75% of what is not clear. Somehow your life experience can fit in a line, and because it's data, it has authority. So it tells you who you are today, and I guess it encourages you through some gamification process to be maybe at 85% tomorrow. So this is the whole thing about tracking and optimization. This is a major Silicon Valley philosophy of what you can't improve, what you cannot measure. Now, applied to life, it's a little bit funny because most of the important things in life you cannot measure. So you end up measuring whatever you can, and then you optimize your life in that direction. And I particularly like this one because, you know, if you go for gamification, you might as well do it for everything. So you can have streaks of how many days in a row did you connect with God. Now, the thing is that it's worth looking a little bit more carefully at where optimization comes from. It's a bit more than 100 years old, and it started with Taylor. It's often referred to as Taylorism. And what happened is that with the Industrial Revolution, when you started having people working in factories, what you wanted to do is actually have interchangeable workers. So you wanted to box what everybody's tasks were and make sure that they were as efficient as possible, and then optimize the efficiency of your workers in the production line. Basically, optimization is 100% about being a cog in the machine. And now it's a little bit of a funny thing for optimization to be driving so much of what is supposed to make us better as people, especially as we are facing automation, where pretty much anything where you're a cog in the machine, it's just a matter of time before it's just taken over by a machine, because they're actually better at being machines than we are. So we are really optimizing ourselves to irrelevance if what you want is to be a better cog in the machine. And at that point, maybe it's worth like going, hold on, pause at this point. Okay, if the job is to absorb as much data as possible, crunch it as quickly as possible, and get to an answer, then probably AI does it quite well. But that's not really what we do as humans. We actually have two cognitive systems. There is the rational one, and then there's the emotional one. And the rational is one that, to some extent, AI can take over some of those jobs. The emotional one is actually key. And it's not about, you know, am I having an emotional experience? That is one aspect of it. But basic things like decision-making, especially in the face of ambiguity, is actually down to your emotional system. That's groundbreaking research by Damasio and others about now 20 years ago, where people that do have damage that inhibits their emotions from functioning properly, it's not that they make bad decisions, they make no decisions. And in fact, this is what happens when you try to incorporate AI, say, in the workings of a corporation or government and so on. You can crunch the numbers. The crunching of the numbers gives you some other numbers, but it doesn't actually give you a decision. The decision making happens either in a system external to what the AI plugs in, or somebody just gets the numbers and then they make a decision. And the two things can be quite separate.
Going on in human understanding, which is not computational. That it's different from what a computer does. So, okay, when people call it artificial intelligence, I think that's a misnomer.
What should it be?
Artificial cleverness, perhaps.
Right.
But AC stands for alternating current, so you couldn't say that wouldn't work, you see.
Right, but how many people would you say, I know you don't like sides in this, but
how many agree with me?
But the fashion has run against you. The fashion is that, no, we're going to build a machine, and human consciousness is essentially, we will be able to capture it in a digital machine.
Yeah, well, I think that's just wrong. Yeah.
There, you heard it here first.
No, I mean, you can make it. Well, you said I did something else more recently. I produced a chess position, you see, which you give it to Fritz, tuned. That's the best chess computer system, you see, and you program it to be at grandmaster level. And this is a chess position that you show it to any human player who knows anything about the game at all. It's obviously a drawn game. It's a draw. But if you give it to Fritz and play against Fritz, it loses.
Really?
Yeah. And I was expecting it to lose too.
You're a clever clogs, aren't you?
Well, not at chess. That's my. I was the chess dunce in my family.
And how do people react to this? That must have upset the
I
Google
don't
people
know.
immensely.
Well, some people say, "Oh, I could program my computer to do that." But of course, that's cheating because you're using your understanding to. Well, I'm not sure. Would it be quite hard to? I mean, you can do it to. I could program a computer to do the right thing in this position, but then you see, change it a little bit. Then I wouldn't. You see.
Yeah.
This position, you see, that's what I mean. He could program it to get the right answer for that position, sure.
But then, when you say there's something going on in human consciousness which is non-computational, it's quite an innocent-sounding sentence, really. But what word would you reach for to describe the thing which is not computational? Would you reach for something like intuition or inspiration?
Understanding.
Understanding.
Yeah.
But an understanding that you didn't get through by steps of logic.
Yeah, but you see, even that's not understanding. You're just following the rules. You see, if you simply follow the rules you've been given, you can do that without any understanding. The understanding is why the rules work. And that's something different.
Right.
And that's why I say the Gödel thing shows you that if you know why these steps will give you only truths, if you've gone through that, that level of understanding allows you to transcend those rules themselves.
Yes, and that's something that Gödel and you and someone like Greg Chaitin have all said. The computer, once you've given it the rules, like the rules that they put into DeepMind or the program that beat Garry Kasparov, it can laboriously explore all permutations of that rules, but it can't jump outside the rules. And you're saying the human mind can, but not by having another rule that steps behind it to say, oh, now and again jump out of these rules, because you'd then be trapped in that larger set of rules. You'd still be trapped.